I always like to double check that our technology is good to go. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's March 22nd, 2022, the regular council meeting of Town of Rocky Mountain House. So I'd like to do adoption of agenda 2.1. Is there any additions or deletions or errors on today's agenda? Seeing none, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda for March 22nd, 22. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So number 3, public hearing. So I hereby declare the public hearing for amendment bylaw 2022/02, a bylaw to amend land use bylaw 2020/19 that regulates the use and development of land and buildings in the town of Rocky Mountain House open. This public hearing is being convened pursuant to the Municipal Government Act in order to consider the proposed amending bylaw 2022/02. At this hearing, the public will be allowed to make representations to council, and all persons present who believe that their interest in a property is affected by the proposed bylaw shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to be present. Written submissions respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Comments and contents of all emails or letters received become part of the public record, as well as this public hearing, which is being live streamed. Those who present may address council by clearly stating your name and address. Then you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. Should council require clarification on any issue raised by the public, council will call on staff to further clarify the matter. The staff's comments will be limited to technical matters and should not be construed as support for, in, or opposition to amending the bylaw 2022/02. The main function of council members today is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council at this public hearing to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. Everyone shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard at this meeting. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making their views heard. I would now like to ask administration to introduce the amending bylaw 2022/02. And I believe we have Renee Hartling here to do that.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. We are here today to provide second and third reading of amending bylaw 2022//02. The first reading of amending bylaw was done on March 1st, 2022. We advertised for 2 weeks in the Mountaineer on March 8th and again on March 15th. And basically what the bylaw does is it amends the land use bylaw in the following sections. So under section 3.2, accessory buildings and uses, we've made amendments to correct a couple of references in there. The existing references, subsections 3.2.2.2 and 3.2.2.4 are incorrect. So those have been corrected and now read as sections 3.2.1.3 and 3.2.1.5. And those sections refer to the 1 meter side and rear setback requirement, and it relates to a situation where that setback might be, I guess, not required in cases where there are 2 budding parcels and a detached garage, for example, is put on the property where it shares a common boundary, and that would be an example of where that would apply. In excerpt 2B, section 3.27, general regulations for manufactured homes. We've suggested amendments that are more consistent with common practices, whereby under section 3.27.1, there's an isolated statement where it We've isolated the statement into one statement that would apply in all cases where the external appearance of a manufactured home must be compatible with other buildings in the vicinity. And the second change was the manufactured home is a discretionary use in all residential districts, except for in the manufactured home district. We've just made some clarification there. This ensures compatibility with stick-built homes in other districts. Under section or under excerpt 2C, section 9.1 public district, religious assembly is added as a discretionary use, and section or in the excerpt 2D, section 9.3 future development district, we've added the following uses to discretionary uses: agriculture general, manufactured home, religious assembly, and secondary manufactured home over 80 acres. In the future development district, the general intent is identified, ensuring that development on the lands is consistent with the intent of the changes ensure the consistency in what the use of that district is. In excerpt 2E, section 14.3, the use definition, the definition of agriculture general has been amended, removing the breeding and the raising of livestock, so it's consistent with our town livestock bylaw. In excerpt 2F, section 14.3, we've added a definition for secondary manufactured home, providing clarity on the use and confirming that it can only be considered on parcels over 80 acres. In excerpt 2G, section 16, schedule B, groups of uses, secondary manufactured home has been added as a subordinate group. I guess public bylaw, we did send an email out to several agencies, which I've outlined on the report. We have received one comment that was from Fortis, Alberta, who has no concerns, and just said for any electrical services to contact. They've provided a contact number there. No other comments were received as of checked this morning. There was no other comments received.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
So seeing that there is no one present here who would like to speak on the amending bylaw 2022/02, I'll continue on. Does council have any technical questions for administration? Seeing none, can I please have a motion to close the public hearing for amending bylaw 2022/02? Councillor Fraser.
I so move.
And all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship.
So that concludes 3.1. Moving on to 4.1, we have a delegation today from Mr. Liam Bolton with a citizen concern. Mr. Bolton, welcome.
Thank you. All right. Is it all right if I take this off?
That's fine.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Mayor Bache. Thank you, Council. My name is Liam Bolton. I am from Rocky Mountain House. I went to school. I took my kindergarten through grade 12 schooling here, and I just have a demand today, I urge town council to implement a bylaw that bans hate symbols and slogans and symbols of bigotry. So that would include things like Confederate flags, swastikas, iron crosses, the slogans, the Nazi slogans, blood and soil, as well as blood and honor, SS bolts representing the Schutzstaffel, nooses that celebrate Jim Crow era lynchings, slogans of the China virus and Kung flu, and any other hate symbols or symbols that promote bigotry that may appear in town. So I think this is important to implement because these symbols and ideas dehumanize those that are targeted, and they say that the targeted groups aren't welcome in Rocky. And I'll just give a quick definition of bigotry. So we're clear on what I mean by my urging of by this urge. So bigotry is the hate, dislike, or fear of a group based on gender, race, ethnicity, nationality, country of origin, color, religion, sexual orientation, being transgender, etc. And yeah, that's really all I came here today for. So yeah, just to urge town council to implement a bylaw that bans hate symbols and symbols of bigotry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did we have any questions for Mr. Bolton? Councillor Phillips.
Not really, kind of a question, I guess. I'm just not sure if you're aware that further on down our agenda, we're talking about Bill C-229.
No,
Are you
I'm
aware of
aware.
that? Okay. It is a topic item later in our agenda, Bill C-229, which is banning Symbols Hate Act
Okay.
through the federal government. So I just wasn't sure if you're aware that we will be discussing that later. on
Okay,
in the
awesome.
agenda.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
Did we have any other questions or Councillor Alt?
Just a comment, just want to thank you. I appreciate you coming in and giving a voice to the youth in this town. You're not a teenager, but you grew up here, and I appreciate your insight.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for
Yeah.
coming today. I really appreciate you attending our council meeting and being involved with your community. And have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. to
Thank
speak.
you. So would someone like to make a motion, please? Sorry, thank you. 5.1. Moving on, adoption of regular council meeting minutes of March 1st, 2022. Are there any additions or omissions from March 1st, 2022? Seeing none, I take a motion to adopt the regular council meeting minutes of March 1st, 2022. All in favor, Councillor Ald, sorry.
I'm just gonna make the motion to accept the draft council meetings. First.
Perfect. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving forward, 6.1 delegations of Mr. Liam Bolton. Would we like to make any motions? Or discussion first, I guess, Councillor Fraser.
So when we got our packages on Friday, I went and looked at what other communities in Alberta were doing, and both Edmonton and Strathcona County have addressed this and have banned the public display of hate symbols in their community. And I think if you go back to our strategic plan and we go back to what we want for Rocky Mountain House, we want it to be a welcoming community. And I understand that there are those who are going to say it is free speech, but in Canada, free speech has limits, and hate speech is one of the very clearly not protected kinds of speech. And for me, what is a swastika if not a physical manifestation of hate speech? We have rules in our community standards bylaws against graffiti, against spitting, against how many shrubs that you need to put in a lot before you can sell it for a home. I understand that the federal government is looking at doing it and adding it to the criminal code. But my argument here is that that could take a long time. And like we did with conversion therapy, I think that it matches our values to ban these hate symbols in our town.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phillips.
I was just going to bring up the fact that we are going to be talking about this again further down in the agenda under item 9.1 for Bill C-229. I'm not sure if this discussion should be part of that, or if we should discuss this now, and because we have this basically the same item being discussed twice. One about a bylaw in town, and the other one is support of a federal bill. So I just don't know if we should have the discussion all at once or have two separate discussions.
I have a question for administration. Whereabouts would a bylaw or would it be a policy fit in amongst all our existing policies?
So you were, so just for clarification, so it's Bill C 313. And that has received first reading by the House of Commons in June. So the federal government has taken the initial steps on that. I don't think it's on the list of precedents yet for second reading, but the federal government has initiated that the banning of hate symbols for the criminal code. So if council did make a bylaw, it'd become ultra virus as soon as the federal government passed their legislation. So I don't know if council wants to pursue that, knowing that the federal government is already in that process.
And so for clarification, we would have to make a separate bylaw to address this issue, or would it be like, could it be nestled in amongst something we already have existing? Like,
Well,
like-
your worship, so if council wanted to draft a bylaw with this, I would suggest it be a separate bylaw, because eventually it will become ultra virus. So then it just comes null and void versus having it mixed in with another bylaw, which makes it confusing.
and that answered my question. Thank you very much. Councillor Boniface.
I agree with Councillor Fraser. If we're going to wait for the federal government to come up with the policy and the laws to handle this, we could be waiting a long time. We're all aware that we've had people contact us within our community in the last 6 months kind of thing about things that they have saw. If we were to go forward with a bylaw, as our CEO has stated, that when the federal government does do something, then it'll become null and void anyway. But I think it would show respect on our part for all of our citizens if we were to go forward with that, doing it first rather than waiting.
Councillor Phillips.
Not that I'm not in favor of banning hate symbols. I definitely think that it's something that we should look at for sure. My only concern is if we spend the time and the energy on a bylaw that is going to be overruled by the federal government, is it the best use of our resources? That's my only concern.
I have another question for administration. So if we wanted to do a bylaw, could we do it so that it reflected Bill C 313 in its entirety, and then would it be still valid after 313, or because it's a federal law, it still gets?
Yeah, it'd still be ultra virus because it is a federal law. So,
Okay. And it's like we are talking about it, but it's past first reading. And is it scheduled for second and third reading already? Does anybody already know?
So your worship, no, it's not on a list of precedents for the federal government right now. So
Okay.
it's not scheduled.
Councillor Boniface.
Could we then accept this for information and set a time limit that if the federal government has not proceeded with the bill at a certain date, that at that time we would proceed with our own bylaw, and that will give it time for maybe hold it off, as Councillor Phillips has said, it would free up that time, but we don't want to wait 3 years for the federal government either.
So if we said, for example, we tabled it till the first meeting in July, that gives it 1 year that it had, because it says July 6, 2021, that the first reading was done. It gives it a year, and then reviewed the discussion in July. Does that sound fair to all the council members, or would there like to be more discussion on that? Councillor Fraser.
I guess there are issues now. It's not that this is a academic discussion. There are hate symbols being displayed in our town right now. There's objects of hate being sold in town right now. And I understand that the federal government is working on something, and maybe it will go through, in which case it will become ultra virus. But there are other municipalities within Alberta that have done this. they have always been very, very generous when sharing their bylaws and their procedures with us. I don't think this would be a great deal of work on the bylaw writing side. It might upset some people, but my question is, are we more afraid of upsetting people who want to display hate symbols, or are we more concerned that there are people who are living in a town where there are symbols that say they don't belong? Like, how are we being an inclusive and welcoming community if we are allowing that to go on?
Counselor Phillips?
I'm not going to speak for myself. I can't speak for anyone else around the table here, but I don't think anyone's saying that we're not, maybe not in support of this, of banning hate crimes. The question is, because the federal government is already in the process, do we want to use our resources to make up a bylaw that will become obsolete once the federal government enacts something? I mean, July is only 3 months away. It's not a long period of time. And I understand other communities have enacted their own bylaws, but that may have been before the federal government was doing anything. Now that the federal government it's just a timing issue. Do we want to spend the time, energy, and money to do something that may become obsolete in 6 months?
So I agree with Counselor Phillips. I'm like, I think it's our duty to do the best we can with the resources that we have, and we have a number of priorities, and we do want Rocky Mountain House to be an inclusive, welcoming community. We haven't had, I mean, of the small issues that we've received, I don't know if this needs to take precedence over all the other matters that administration is working on to manage and look after our community. I sure would like to see it tabled until July 6th and to see what the federal government goes forward with, but I am open for sure to other ideas. Like I said, we do want to be a welcoming, inclusive community that's free of negative symbolism. But I mean, if we have to look after, administration has already a number of items that are priorities on looking after our town. I'll do Counselor Fraser. Did you still have a question? Your light's on, and then I'll go to Counselor Boniface.
I have a motion, so if Counselor Boniface wants to go first. I can appreciate that, but I think that given the rise in white supremacy and white nationalism and the violence associated with it, given the CSIS report on how it is becoming an issue, and it is probably our most pressing domestic issue, I would like to move that we write a bylaw to ban hate symbols in Rocky Mountain House.
So before we vote on this, could we have any discussion over the motion on the floor? Counselor Phillips?
Yeah, my biggest discussion isn't that I'm not in favor of this topic and not in favor of banning hate crimes. My only concern is to spend the time and energy on a bylaw that may be overruled in 6 months. That's my only concern. I want to be, conscious of the fact that we have admin time and admin, and council time as well. So that's why I am in favor of just delaying 3 months just to see how the federal government plays out. If it doesn't, then of course we can readdress it. That's my only concern.
Thank you very much, Counselor Auld.
I just have a question for admin. If we come up with our own bylaw and the federal government has not done anything with it, is it actually enforceable? Like, I'm just
Yes,
wondering
thank you,
if we
Teresa.
make our own and it's not a provincial or federal.
So the only issue with this bylaw, if we actually do move forward with it, is I've done a bit of research, and basically what I've gathered, it's not really going to be enforceable because the Charter of Rights protects expression of interest. And symbols like flags might be offensive to people, but they don't actually technically deemed criminal or illegal. So that's my concern with doing a bylaw, especially before the federal one, because that falls under the criminal code. So it's got a lot more weight than any bylaw that we pass.
And then that's my concern is that we do this, we can't enforce it. It's got no teeth. It's virtual signaling and we can't do anything about it. As much as I agree with it, I don't, if it's not enforceable, I don't see let's move ahead. Unfortunately.
And I also agree with Counselor Ald, like if we spend money, time, effort, administration, that all costs taxpayers money, and then we can't enforce anything. It seems, I would prefer to wait till July and see what the federal government has done. And we can always table it and redress it, and I'll go to Counselor Fraser, and then I'll go to Counselor Hutchinson.
I guess it depends on what you consider enforceable. For me, we can give somebody a ticket for not shoveling their walk. We can give somebody a ticket for tint. We can give, there's a difference between criminal code and bylaw infractions, and we can ticket people. And yes, it would not be as heavy as what the federal government can come up with. That is the limit of our jurisdiction. But we mandate and prescribe behavior and standards for our community all the time. And if you fall on the wrong side of that, then you are ticketed. And whether or not we write a whole bunch of tickets, there will still be that tool there for us. And as far as freedom of expression goes, if you go right under free speech, hate speech is not protected. If you want to follow the free speech, then you have to follow where the limits of that go. And if flags fall under speech and interest, hate speech would not be covered.
Thank you. We'll go to Counselor Hutchinson now.
That was my question too. Who would be actually enforcing something if we had, assuming that would fall on our CPO's shoulders. I agree with Len on, I think that it's something that if it's coming federally, I would rather go that way than spending and not even the time and the money. It's just, again, how it will be enforced and what challenges that would bring. Whereas federal level, I think that would make a much easier job on the people who need to enforce it.
Thank you very much. Counselor Boniface.
I agree with everything that's said here today, but I'd be willing to wait until July. But would it be prudent for us then to draft a letter as a town council and send to federal government to say, this is a concern that we have and how is it moving forward? And can we get a reply back on it?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Kraus, I think we would be able to pass a motion to write a letter to our MP and then have him present it. Is that the correct path?
So your worship, just a couple of things. So, I mean, this is item 9.1 in support of the bill. So, I mean, that's where council would lobby for the bill. It's not on the order of precedence for the federal government right now in the House of Commons. So it's not going to happen before July. So July would be not an appropriate date to see if it happens because it's not going to happen. You're probably looking more, if you're looking for a date to see if it happens, it'd probably be like at the end of the fall session of the federal government.
Counselor Ald.
So I guess my question then, did min still stands? If we create a bylaw, is it enforceable?
So your worship, I mean, administration can review that. I think I would want to do some more research on that before, I provide you with a solid answer. I know, I mean, we see this coming down the pipe and administration does do a quick kind of review so we can advise council. I mean, the bylaws that I have read only pertain to public places and not hang it in your window of your house, for example. So there would be limitations on us. I would want to see legal counsel on such a bylaw because we are poking at the Charter of Rights. So if council wants, administration can research it more and bring back more information on that to fully answer your question.
So I'm going to go back to Counselor Fraser. Did you want to keep your motion or would you like to amend it at this point?
I have no problem amending that we pass it and they bring it back with more information and more research, so we can see what the shape of that is. But I think we should vote on the spirit of it today.
So can we have her original motion again? So that we're all clear on what it was, because I can't remember now, we've had discussion.
So I just had be it resolved that council instruct administration to write a bylaw regarding hate symbols. I'm sure there was a bit more to that. Though.
No, that's the gist of it.
Counselor Phillips?
So I heard you say you wanted us to vote on the spirit of the request, but the motion is more for the meat and potatoes of the request. So there's two different, I'm getting two different philosophies.
So would you like your motion to stand as it is, or would you like to amend it?
I guess all of our bylaws, all of our motions, we put forward and say, do we want to ban hate symbols? And then admin will do research and we'll bring it back, and then we vote on that particular bylaw. And we amend that bylaw, but we have to tell them to go and write the bylaw and research the bylaw. This is what happened with conversion therapy. We passed the motion to write the bylaw, and the bylaw came back, and then we went through it and we made any amendments that we needed to make, and then we passed it and it was enforced. So
Do you like to
Yeah.
have your bylaw stand?
I would.
So Counselor Ald?
No, sorry.
So we could vote on this, and then if we need another, we can't do two motions at the same time. So I think we're at the point where if we're leaving the motion as it stands, before we can move forward, let's vote on the Counselor Phillips.
More discussion on that.
Sure.
So to me, if we're voting to create a bylaw, we're creating a bylaw.
Yeah.
If we're voting to get more information before we make the motion to create a bylaw, that's two separate motions.
Different motion.
From my point of view.
Mhm.
I just see it as two separate motions, asking for more information and actually creating a bylaw. So that's.
Yeah. So we can't move forward with a different motion until we address the motion on the floor. Is that correct?
Yep, so just for clarification with Councillor Fraser's motion, what administration would do is we do the research and we would actually draft a bylaw and bring it back for council's consideration with the information council wanted.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions over this motion? Okay, so all in favor? And that is not carried. Counselor Ald?
I would like to make a motion that we instruct administration to take this back, gather some more information, see what we can and can't do, and bring it back to council for information.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on the motion on the table? Okay, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Sure where I'm at. So old business. 7.1. RFD amending bylaw 2022/02, a bylaw to amend the Town of Rocky Mountain House land use bylaw 2020/19. And Renee Hartling again.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I've gone through the details of the report in the public hearing section. I just wanted to advise council that if I'd be happy to take any questions. If there are no questions, I have suggested a couple that I've made some recommendations as far as the resolutions for the bylaw.
Does any council members have a question about this bylaw change? Would anybody like to make a motion at this time? Counselor Phillips.
I'd like to make a motion that council give second reading to bylaw 2022/02, a bylaw to amend land use bylaw 2020/19 as presented.
Thank you very much. Any discussion on the floor? Counselor Ald, your lights on. So, no discussion on the floor about the motion. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your
Couns-
Worship. We just need third reading.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Fraser.
I will move that council give third and final reading to bylaw 2022/02.
All in favor? No discussion on the floor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, council.
Okay, so 7.2 Highway 11 twinning, Mayor Bache. So the last 2 weeks, we've been at a number of meetings and assemblies where we had opportunity to talk to and ask questions of ministers. So at the Leadership Caucus on March 10th, I had an opportunity to ask the Minister of Transportation, the Honorable Minister Sani, if any further consideration had been made for Highway 11 through the town of Rocky Mountain House. And at that time, her answer to me was that they are still considering it and reviewing it and looking at it, but she couldn't guarantee me at that time any further developments in Highway 11. So then the following week on March 17th, 16th, they had a second bear pit at the RMA where members were allowed to address ministers again. And actually, Councillor Sani, Honorable Minister Sani saw me sitting in the front row and stopped in and talked to me and asked me if I was going to ask about the highway again. And I said, no, I wasn't going to talk to the highway again, but I wanted to talk to her after the bear pit session. And so she invited me to do so. And so I asked her if we could talk about it, Highway 11, in a formal meeting setting, because there's a number of concerns that if the portion leading up to Rocky is completed before we have a path through the town that's connecting Highway 22 north and south, as well as Highway 11 east and west, it's going to be really impactful to the town of Rocky Mountain House with a number of really important issues. It's a trade route. We have all this new, they put all this money, like $8.2 million into the West Country or, and things like that. So we're seeing a lot more traffic than say normal. So she's agreed to discuss, that it would be beneficial before finishing that. I think it's portion D on their Alberta website to have a meeting about the town of Rocky Mountain House and through there. So I just want to let council know that I've talked to our MLA because he's been behind us getting this put through, and he said at the AAM, which was the AUMA, that it was the original intention with the original ministers that Len spoke with. And when you talk to Minister McIver, yeah, that the original intention was to go to the west side of Rocky Mountain House. And so Minister Nixon's office is making a meeting with Honorable Minister Swanee's office to connect and move forward on seeing where Rocky Mountain House stands in the situation, because yes. And then so I just wanted to update everyone because we're all together and that's what happened. So Councillor Phillips.
I mean, speaking for myself, I would love to be part of that meeting.
Absolutely.
I know myself, Councillor Fraser. I'm not sure if Councillor Ald was there at the original announcement. You what?
Oh,
Okay,
at
yeah.
the original announcement.
Yeah, the original announcement that was
Yeah.
made by Premier Kenny and then Minister McIver, who was the Minister of Transportation at the time, and Minister Nixon was there. That original intent was to have that road come through Rocky Mountain House. I've spoke personally to Minister McIver and Minister Nixon, and they both agree that that was the intent. Minister Sahi is the one that has a different version or a different intent. And I think it would be definitely beneficial to have Minister Nixon there for sure. And I would love to see Minister McIver there. I'm not sure if you could ever get all three of them in the same room at the same time, but it would be valuable to have that because that was the original intent of the announcement. And when I spoke to both of those ministers, that was their recollection as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I had some Yep, so that's where I was at. So haven't heard anything back yet. And I for sure will say that we want to have a meeting with as many council members as would like to attend as possible and move forward if that's in favor with council. Councillor Ald?
I was just gonna ask whether this has been done formally through administration or just chatting at the meeting.
Yeah, so I did talk to Mr. Kraus and he said I was allowed to reach out and speak to other levels of government and to see their feelings of having a meeting. And I did, like I said, I did speak to Minister Nixon's office this morning because we talked to him as our representative in the legislature building and to clarify, you know, the original intent. And Jody said that they were supposed to contact their office before any like changes or discussions happened with the town of Rocky Mountain House. And so then she said, so that's why I'm bringing it up today. I know that when I talked to Mr. Kraus about it on Friday, if you look further in the agenda today, in the CAO report and on planning and community development report, Alberta Transportation has reached out to Rocky Mountain House asking questions about what our plans are when the road, where they should end it is that. And so those were some questions I had when we got to that part of the meeting today, was to see what are they asking us and to move forward. Councillor Ald?
Yeah, all I was wondering was whether we needed to have administration send a letter to set up this meeting or not, or if it's coming from the provincial government to us, or if we need to send a letter to set up the meeting.
Mr. Kraus?
Well, Mayor, I'm not really sure of the conversations you had with the MLAs or ministers, but typically, I mean, the elected officials agreed to meet and then the administrations work together to establish the meeting date and time.
So do we need to set a motion to ask you to do that?
Well,
Or
Mr. Nixon's admin is going to let us know when they're available.
So just for clarification, Mayor, who's us? Is it administration?
The town. So would you like me to, she was just going to email me back how she made out this morning. Do you want a official letter from administration to?
No, it's just normal process is the administrations work together to establish the meeting after the
Okay.
elected officials decide to meet.
Okay.
and that's just what I just want to make sure, because it is an important meeting, that we do it and it gets on paper and there's agreements to meet, not every time you go to these meetings, everybody says a whole lot of fluff and it doesn't come through. So if we can get, whether it's their admin and get a hold of our admin or vice versa, but I would really like to see that meeting on paper.
Okay, awesome. So do we need a motion or is that in an administrative inquiry?
Well, your worship, I mean, as long as Minister Nixon's administration, I guess, contacts us and we'll work with them to establish the meeting.
Okay,
So council might want a resolution that, you know, that council pursue a meeting with Minister Sani and that all council members are able to attend.
okay, so somebody would like to make the motion or is more discussion?
I'd like to make that motion.
So can we add that Minister Nixon and Minister Sani are at the meeting to the letter?
Reach out to Minister McIver, Nixon.
As well.
Have, if all three could be here would be fantastic, but it's probably not going to happen, but send it to all three.
Councillor Phillips?
I definitely think it should go to Minister McIver as well, because I actually had Minister Nixon and Minister McIver standing right in front of me
Yeah.
at the same time. And I specifically said to both of them, what was your recollection on this meeting? And they both said the exact same thing in front of each other. So they're very well on page with what was said. And we need those two ministers to be in the room with Minister Sani to say that this was the intent.
So and I know we've had some feedback from them. They haven't said that it's no, but they haven't put it through on the final planning stages on the Alberta website. And then now that they're asking our administration questions about it, it makes me think that we're not there yet. Does that sound fair? So any more discussion about the motion put forward on the table from Councillor Ald? All in favor then? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So moving on, 8.1 RFD aerial fire truck. And I don't know who is going to speak towards that. Mr. Kraus.
So thank you, Your Worship. So just to provide a little bit of background to council. So the ICC met and also discussed the aerial fire truck. At the ICC meeting, both members of councils agreed to bring it back to each respective council about amending that truck to a $1.65 million aerial truck. We brought it forward to council, the committee, the whole council has voted for a rise and report to bring it to this council meeting for a decision to amend the budget to acquire a $1.65 million aerial truck. The latest update, if you've seen the county council meeting this morning, county council did pass the approval of a purchase of a $1.65 million truck. And it was expressed by the fire department at that meeting that with that dollar figure, they can still get a 100-foot platform truck with 4 outriggers to meet all their safety requirements.
Excellent.
So, as our partners have amended their budget, or not so much the budget, but the purchase of a 1.65, our recommendation is to follow suit with our partners.
So is there any discussion or would we like to move towards an resolution at this point? Seeing no discussion, I'd like to make the motion be it resolved that council amend the 2022 capital budget by adjusting the project 2302604 aerial truck to 82,500 with the funds coming from reserves and delete the project 2312-308 fire. Am I not right on the right thing?
You are, Your Worship. So part of the RFD is when we were going through the budget, we did have one pickup truck for the fire department that's going to Caroline in our budget, but we are not responsible for that cost. We're amending the budget to remove that cost.
Okay, so I'll continue on with the motion then. Delete the project 2312-308 fire pickup truck and removing the $50,000 expenditure. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councillor Fraser?
I just noticed that we're missing a 0 at the end of the recommended alternative. I'm assuming it will get corrected. That's fine. Point it out in case it made a difference.
It's just for clarification, Council. That's the 10% deposit for the 2022 budget.
Okay.
And then the 90% of the full purchase will be in the 2023 budget. So this is just to reflect the 2022 budget.
Okay, so all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. 8.2, kick it to the curb. Really excited about this. Mr. Kraus.
Ms. Breeze, do you want to discuss this as it's yours or do you want me to?
Thank you, Your Worship, Council. So as part of the council strategic plan was to provide a reuse program. So administration was tasked by council to look into a kick it to the curb event for the town. So at the Environmental Sustainability Committee meeting on March the 2nd, a motion was passed or a resolution to move forward with this initiative and create an annual kick it to the curb event starting basically small and just doing 2 weekends, the third weekend in June and the third weekend in September. So basically this is coming back to administration for consideration. One additional note that I will say though is the third weekend in June is Father's Day weekend as well. So just so everybody knows that.
Nobody's gonna be home.
Or they're gonna all be out
Yeah.
shopping around for free stuff.
Dads love stuff.
So also to note in your package, Laura did up some new advertising for us.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And we would like to have some discussion now. Counselor Fraser.
I was just gonna say, I'm really excited to see this start up. I think we've been wrestling with what to do that was financially smart, but also help to fill that need and to encourage people to reuse. And I'm kind of excited to see everybody out shopping on a beautiful weekend in June. So if there wasn't any other discussion.
We do have some more.
Yeah,
Counselor
no, we do,
Phillips.
okay.
I just wanted to, I know this was Counselor Fraser's brainchild in the original discussions, and I think it's a great idea, and I think she should feel free to make a motion.
Seeing no further discussion, Counselor Fraser, would you like to make a motion?
Sure would.
Well, are we happy with the dates? Just before we make the motion? Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. I will move that council instruct administration to advertise and promote the annual Kick It to the Curb event for 2022 for the third weekend in June and the third weekend in September.
All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. 8.4 support, 8.3 mutual aid agreement. RFD for mutual aid agreement. So Tracy Breeze, did you want to speak on that?
Thank you again, Your Worship. So under the Emergency Management Act, the local authority shall approve emergency plans and programs subject to regulations, of course, and enter into agreements and make payments or grants or both to persons or organizations for the provision of services in the development or implementation of emergency plans or programs. So the mutual aid agreement identifies the nature of resources, the manner in which the request shall be made, and the conditions under which mutual aid will be provided. So the draft mutual aid agreement was presented to the Municipal Emergency Advisory Committee on March the 7th. Administration was asked to present this agreement at today's council meeting. Since the Emergency Advisory Committee, I have been in contact with Clearwater County regarding the agreement, and they would like to make two small additions to the agreement before they present it to their council. So one being a reference to the fire services agreement and another reference to the FCSS and their role in the ESS, which is the Emergency Social Services for Emergency Management. So right now, council can adopt this agreement in principle, but the agreement does not create a legal obligation that is binding on the parties. So Clearwater County has proposed to have a meeting set up in early April to discuss this agreement as well.
So I have a question. So at this point, we're gonna resolve that we're happy with the changes with the agreement, make a motion, and then it goes to the county and then they agree on it and then it's finalized?
No, so right now it's kind of sitting, it's just in draft. So yeah, you can adopt it in principle, but they do want to make changes. So it's kind of going back and forth negotiation between us and Clearwater County. They want to add a few things. And so that'll be a discussion between the two administrations, and then it comes back to council for you guys to adopt.
Is there any other questions or discussion on this item? Would anybody like to make a motion? Counselor Phillips,
I'll make a motion that we accept the mutual aid agreement presentation and endorse it in principle at this time.
is that satisfactory motion for admin? Okay, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. 8.4, support for Ukraine. Counselor Phillips.
Thank you. So, a few of us in this room here were raised during the Cold War era. And there's a whole new generation that really doesn't understand what the Cold War was all about. And unfortunately, that came back with force as Russia invaded Ukraine. And the people of Ukraine, they're being very courageous and very brave right now, but there's a lot going against them. And I just think that it would be a very good thing if the town of Rocky Mountain House did a symbolic gesture of raising the Ukrainian flag to show support for the people of the Ukraine that are in a democratically elected, freely governed state, and they're being invaded. So I would just like to support them and all countries that are democratically elected and have the right to be a sovereign nation. So I would like to make a motion that we raise the Ukrainian flag at our town office as a show of support for the Ukrainian people.
And I believe there's a spare, there's a location for that flag that doesn't take down anything. Is that correct?
Yeah, your worship. So we have one single flagpole that council has designated for special flags.
Yeah.
So sorry, Councillor All.
I was just gonna say, I agree with Len. We have a pretty strong Ukrainian culture and community here as well. So they are still part of our community and deserve our support as well.
I just wanted to read some information from the FCM. So they are the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which we belong to. They represent the municipalities all across Canada. And on March 10th, 2022, Joanne Vanderhayden issued a statement on behalf of nearly 2,000 member municipalities from coast to coast in support of the people of Ukraine. And I just wanted to say, part of her statement that you can see on their website. Local governments play a vital role as promoters of peace, prosperity, and democracy for our citizens here at home and across the world. Communities are critical to the successful settling of refugees fleeing conflict, whether it be coordinating local supports, offering transit or shelter services, or taking lead on inclusive integration. As municipal leaders, we pledge to work with the Government of Canada and provincial and territorial governments across the country to oppose this injustice and to do more to welcome those fleeing conflicts in search of safety and security. And then she also goes on to say that we wish to support those impacted by the crisis in Ukraine and to donate to the Red Cross's Ukraine Humanitarian Crisis Appeal. And you can go to the redcross.ca and just type in Ukraine and you go right to their website that the money gets designated to Ukraine. So there's no further discussion. We'll vote on the motion on the floor. And seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, Councillor Phillips, for bringing that forward. 8.5, cannabis revenue discussion. Councillor Phillips.
So I attended the Alberta Municipalities Leadership Caucus, as well as the RMA convention in the last 2 weeks. And at the Leadership Caucus, at the ministerial forum, I asked Minister MacGyver a question in this regarding cannabis revenue, and I know I'd sent an update to council originally. So what was originally happening when cannabis became legal, the federal government was giving the provinces 75% of the revenue, and that revenue was going to be shared with the provinces within a 2-year span. And that revenue was going to go for things such as the bylaws we had to create, signage, enforcement. There was a multitude of things that revenue sharing was going for, and it hasn't happened. So I did bring that question up at the Alberta Leadership Caucus, and then at the RMA convention, I had the chance to talk to Minister MacGyver again and had the discussion again with him, and he suggested that I should be sending him an email, and he felt, you could tell that it was an oops, it was missed. I've had a number of other municipalities have either sent me emails or talked to me at the convention saying, hey, we forgot about this. I did talk to the incoming FCM president at the RMA about this issue, and she's the mayor of Vegreville, and she said the same thing. I talked with Kathy Heron, who is the Alberta Municipalities president, and she was in the same understanding that it slipped through the cracks. So before I send a letter to a cabinet minister, I just want to make sure that cabinet's aware that this had happened, this conversation happened, and that I'll be sending a email off to Minister MacGyver. And I just wanted to make sure that council was aware of this.
So I think following the other process, we'll have administration write the letter, but Minister McIver's response at the first one was that he sort of wanted us to prove that there was a cost to it in order for us to get money. So is there a way we could show that we had costs incurred from the previous when it came into effect? Like that was his initial question on the
So-
floor about that.
So his question, and unfortunately, after I asked my question, my mic gets turned off.
Yeah,
I
so you couldn't
couldn't-
follow
I
up.
couldn't follow up with him. That's why I did an RMA. His question to me was that this was tied to additional crime. And that was never the intention in the first place, that this revenue sharing was tied to additional crime. So, but I never got to respond to him because my microphone got turned off at that point.
Right. And so in your discussions with him, did that get addressed? That he
Yes.
doesn't want to see the extra costs that were incurred because of this? Because
No.
that's what his question, like, to the public was when you like, I know that your mic got shut off, but
Yes.
I'm just, so we wouldn't have to like address the
No,
costs
we
that we
didn't
incurred.
need to address the costs. He just wanted an email saying that this is what happened. This is what was supposed to happen. The costs were for costs that were incurred by municipalities. And this isn't just Rocky Mountain House. This is across the province. And and to send him an email to remind him of this, and he can follow up on it.
Okay, so Mr. Kraus, what kind of a motion did you want? Or did you want just
Well-
administration inquiry again?
So your worship, I mean, administration's recommendation would be, that the town actually send a formal letter to Mr. McIver.
Yeah.
I would recommend that it's CC to all members of Alberta municipalities. If you have all the municipalities rallying behind this venture, it's going to get action faster.
Yeah. And I was going to suggest that as well, because I did, again, talk to Kathy Heron and the incoming FCM president, who will be the FCM president come July.
So it would just affect the AM, the AM, not the RMAs, correct? Because they wouldn't have,
It will affect some counties depending on what they have within their counties.
so both email lists.
Yeah, and
So
if- and if-
did you need a motion for the formal letter? Counselor Phillips, did you want
Then
to?
I would like to make a motion that admin sends a letter to Minister MacGyver, Alberta municipalities, incoming FCM president. I can't remember the mayor's name, but she's the mayor of Vegreville, as well as RMA President Paul McLaughlin, the issue that we discussed regarding cannabis revenue sharing.
Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call out to vote. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
And just as a quick side note, this is why we go to those conventions. When you get time in front of cabinet ministers and in front of FCM incoming presidents and Alberta municipalities presidents, that's where these issues come up, and that's how they get dealt with.
So 8.6, council communications, Counselor Ald. Your mic.
Okay, so back on March 4th, we had our last meeting, committee of the whole meeting. And there are some comments there that I would like to get some clarification and possible some discussion on. Ms. Cote was giving her presentation on behalf of the Helen Hunley Foundation, offering her donation to some development down at the River Park. There was a comment made by Mayor Beach regarding council procedure having joint projects like this as being funded 50-50. I just wanted clarification that that'd be the first that I've heard of that. And I'm just curious if there is any kind of structure for that, or if that was a misspoke. From
Are you
admin.
asking me to comment
No,
or are you
from
asking?
admin? If there is, are we asking organizations that are willing to donate money for a 50-50 joint coverage on projects?
Your worship, no, we don't have any policy or procedure on that.
Okay, so I'm just curious then, it was your comment, Mayor, that that was a council direction. I'm just curious, do you have that from somewhere? 'Cause I don't recall having that conversation.
No, it was a question. It was a question. It's like our fiduciary duty to look after the monies spent on our town. And I felt that, you know, if taxpayers were going to do a project that wasn't initially on our agenda or our vision statement for the community that was specific to a person, whomever it might be's personal vision, that it's not up to the taxpayers to cover that vision. And it was just a random number that I put out there. And Miss Cote at the time was not offended by it because she actually did the calculation quite quickly, figuring out that it was only 10% of the project. So it wasn't intended to be a council position. It was just part of a discussion to do my fiduciary duty to make sure that we are doing the best for our taxpayers and citizens. It wasn't anything to do with a policy.
Okay, that's where my confusion was, because it definitely come across as a council direction. So thank you.
No,
There was also at the ICC meeting, you are representation or our representation on that ICC committee. Are you fully confident in the fire agreement in going to those meetings?
I beg your pardon?
Are you fully confident in the fire agreement or in your understanding of that agreement to properly represent the council?
Why wouldn't I be?
Well, I'm just curious because at the meeting, you had made a comment that the county would cover more than their fair share, which is against the agreement. And I'm just curious how that would come up.
No, it was a comment that I heard in discussions, and it was just something that we asked about. And it was just because we wanted to compromise and move forward on the project. So it had nothing to do with the fire agreement. It was clarified that it wasn't part of the fire agreement. It actually happened in the past with the fire rescue boat, and that they paid a higher portion than the town of Rocky. And it was just a conversation to put out there to clarify things and move forward in the discussion over the fire truck.
Okay. So I guess in future, if your comments are going to be representing this council, if we can just keep it to what the agreements are specifically. The boat that you're commenting on, that was previous to any agreement. And it was also not a joint venture. The county just went and purchased that boat. It wasn't 50-50. So just for our benefit, if we're in negotiations, if we can keep it to what the agreement is and not step outside of that with.
Councillor Hutchinson, did you have a comment?
I do, with all due respect, Mayor. At the meeting, you're referring to we put it out there. We had an idea. It was not a we. I have read and have reviewed that fire agreement a number of times, and I'm offended that you say we, because I'm assuming you're saying you and I were at the meeting. It wasn't a we. You made the comment, so I just want that to be known that.
Certainly, no problem. I will be more careful of which vernacular I use. Councillor Phillips?
Sorry, when you were answering Councillor Ald's question, you said the dollar amount you had in discussions. I'm just wondering who were the discussions with? Because it wasn't with council.
What are you talking about?
You had said to Councillor Ald that when you were talking about the fire truck and the potential to have the council or the county council pay more and have us pay a different amount, that you
Yeah.
had discussions. And I was just.
So I'll go back.
I just wanted clarification.
Yeah,
as
so
to
I'll
who
go
those
back all the way
discussions
to
were with.
ICC. So we walked into ICC and the direction that we were given was clearly that we were not going to move forward on a project cost sharing of a fire truck because we wanted to replace exactly what we originally had. And Councillor Hutchinson had a number of questions on other topics, and I brought up that our direction from our council was that we did not want to negotiate on a higher project, and that to move forward, what were our options? Because we would have to take it back to council and present it, and we wanted to compromise, get along with our partners and move forward on the project. So I was making suggestions for how we could come about to a compromise if the town of Rocky Mountain House's position that we were clearly given to say we don't want to compromise, we're only staying at the replacement value. It was just a discussion so that we could move forward in coming to a compromise. Does that answer your question?
No, sorry. Just when you replied to Councillor Ald, it sounded like you had a discussion. I was just wondering who the discussion was
The
with.
discussion was in ICC, which was what he was specifically asking me about. Does that sound fair? Councillor Ald, did you have something? Your light is still on.
Yeah, no, I just want to be confident when you're representing council that it's council that you're representing as a whole. There was definitely, the comment was, the way I took it on with Ms. Cote was that you're expecting them to cover 50-50 on joint projects. And as far as I was aware, that was never a discussion, never a policy, never.
Nope,
Nothing.
I would
So-
be happy if someone came and paid 100% of a project. I would be happy if someone came and paid 10% of a project. I was just putting a number out there.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we can move forward from that item. Okay, so that was council communications 8.6. Moving forward, we're at 9.1, seeking endorsement for Bill C-229.
Yeah, so your worship, just a step back. I mean, because it's an agenda item, council should have a resolution. So it would be just accept the discussion as information.
Okay. Councillor Ald,
I'll just accept 8.6 for discussion.
you make a motion to.
Yes.
So all in favor of the motion on no further discussion, and that's carried. Moving forward now to 9.1 endorsement request Bill C-229. So is this now C-313? Is that what you're saying? Or
No,
is
so
there
your
two
worship,
things?
so Bill C-313 got first reading, and now they're trying, that's a bill from last year. So the MP, Peter Julian, is now trying to push it forward on the agenda because it's not in the list of precedents. So it'd be additional support to move this quicker through the federal government.
So did they just change the number of it then?
Yes,
Okay,
it's a bill.
Councillor Phillips?
I mean, just going back to the previous discussion we had in the council meeting here, I'm in full support of this. The faster they can get this into the House of Commons and being voted on and have second and third readings, I think this is great to be expedited.
Does anybody want to make motion? Or do we need further discussion? Councillor Fraser?
I will move that the town of Rocky Mount, or that we direct admin to send a letter of support for Bill C-313.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? No, seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, 9.2, the recycle, the RCA conference. Recycling Council of Alberta, thank you. So we're invited to the council October 19th to 21st. And I believe Councillor Phillips, you went last time, correct?
I did. this is one of those, one of these conferences that there is a lot of really, really, really good information coming out, especially, not just on the recycling front, but just on circular economies, reuse. There's just so much information that you can get. They're, talking about hydrogen becoming the new fuel of the future. I find these conferences are very good, very well put together, and even the networking opportunities you get a lot of mileage out of that. I would be happy to attend this for sure.
I'm really interested in attending it as well. Do we have it in our budget for a number of council members to attend, or is it to specific people?
Your worship, each council has a training budget. So any council that want to attend can attend because they have a budget for training.
Okay. Is there any other council members that are interested in attending it? Councillor Hutchinson,
Yes, I would be too.
Councillor Caprero,
I would be too.
Councillor Fraser, is that,
I would love to go. I'm just not sure that October is going to work for me, but thank you. It's a great conference. I've been to it before, so it's worth it for sure.
okay. So Councillor Ald, is that something you wanted to attend?
When do we have to sign up by?
I'm not sure. It doesn't, I didn't see that. Did you see that, Councillor Phillips?
Reservations prior to September 17th.
I think if we bring this back closer to, I'll know my schedule a whole lot better at that point, but for right now, I can't commit. But if we bring it back in before the deadline to register, I'd appreciate it.
So could we just leave it up to individual councillors to get a hold of administration to go, or do we have to, because it's already part of our budget, right?
Yeah, so your worship, I mean, if council just passes a resolution that any council that wants to attend the RCA conference to advise administration, and we can go from there. So,
Okay,
because we'd probably book the hotels for all, and then
go
council
backwards.
has to get further word.
Councillor Boniface, I never had a chance to let you speak on that. Okay, so can we have a resolution then? Okay, so I'll make a resolution that council agree that we can all attend, whichever councillors would like to attend are able to attend the RCA in October. And whoever can't. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Correspondence for information. There's quite a list. Is there any discussion on any of the items listed? Seeing none, could I have, oh, sorry, Councillor
No,
Phillips.
I had no discussion. I was just going to make a motion to
Okay, seeing,
accept items 10.1 through 10.10 as information.
perfect. No further discussion. That sounds great. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So 11.1, the CAO report from Mr. Kraus.
Yep, thank you, your worship. So a majority of the action items involves council or attending meetings with council. I think the only highlight there is administration did meet with Alberta Transportation and the consultant for Highway 11 twinning. I mean, that meeting was mostly about where it's going to revert back to a 2-lane before it hits town and the intersections coming in. So we did bring up carrying the study through town. But of course, it's their administration, just like us. We follow the direction of our elected leaders, and it is not on the radar, or they're not looking at it at all. So it's at the political level. But if council has any other questions, I mean, administration is really working on getting our clear bag program, working out all the details, working with the contractor and contracts on that too. So that's consuming some of our time. And probably another highlight there is we did an emergency tabletop exercise last week, and we had the province there also. So we met the legislative requirements there. And good for staff. We're actually going to do another emergency exercise in October to keep staff skills up and make sure we exceed the legislation required.
I do have some questions on Highway 11 twinning. Did they offer you specific proposals of where it would end, or they were asking you for your input? Like, how did that work?
The major concern is, and maybe Mr. Schwader can do the right road names, but it's by the church. They don't, that's the intersection they're having problems with.
The RCR?
Is that the RCR? Yeah.
And Augustus.
And Augustus, so.
Oh, I'm fine.
Yeah, so they're debating whether to narrow it back to 2-lane prior to that intersection or incorporate that intersection into their design.
Because of the church there, or
Because of
because?
the existing accesses there. So,
And do you know who you talked to at Alberta Transportation?
It was Chris Peterson. And Chris Fair is the consultant that's working for Alberta Transportation. But AECom.
So could we put that information in the letter that we send to the ministers?
Your worship, I mean, that would not be appropriate
Oh, okay.
information. That's just admin working with admin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, if you have a meeting with the minister, he will probably be there.
Yeah.
Because, right? Because I
Okay.
mean, ministers bring their administration for their technical expertise.
Okay, perfect. Does anybody have any other questions for Mr. Kraus? Okay, moving forward, we need yes, Counselor Phillips.
I would just like to make a motion to accept the CAO report as presented.
All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So 11.2, we have department reports, recreation and community services.
So your worship, Mr. Amends unfortunately cannot be here today. So if council has any questions on the rec and community services report, I will try to answer them.
Does council have any questions? Seeing none. Engineering and operations.
I just had one comment, just the pump track location. Now that there's a location set, I've seen a lot of buzz around town lately about the excitement that's going on with that project.
I have a question for engineering and operations.
Thank you, Your Council. Did you want to do your question on the front end? Your
No,
Worship, or-
no,
oh,
that's fine. Did you want to give your report?
Certainly. I think the big excitement for us, we had that foot of snow drop out of the sky, kept us all hopping. We had a full crew going on the holiday Monday and kind of hit the ground running from there. We had the bulk of town done in 2 weeks, whereas normally it takes us 3. Things are of course now transitioned to pothole season, so we're quite busy with that. We finished selection for the major process gear for the regional wastewater treatment facility, so detailed design is proceeding, looking to break ground this year. And other than that, we are gearing up for the rest of our construction season, repaving, playground purchases, our clear bag program, and off we go.
That was all. Counselor Ald has a question.
Just curious, Doug, do you have a calendar timeline? When do we start doing the spring sweeping? Is that?
The string
ASAP.
sweeping,
Yeah, do you have that
we've
on the
pulled the
schedule?
sweeper out, we're putting new brooms on it now. We will be doing that shortly, weather permitting.
Awesome, thank you.
Counselor Phillips.
I just have a question on, we know that supply chains are hard at best to get things, and the prices of things are going up all the time. Do you anticipate that that's going to impact any of our projects this year, that we may see some prices jump that go beyond budgets that we've already allocated?
It very well could. We've got emails from our pipe supplier saying price of pipes going up 25% across the board. The increase in plastics price is going to probably impact our playground equipment that we want to buy. For the bigger projects, we don't know the full result yet, but yes, that might be coming.
Counselor Hutchinson.
I don't know if this falls under you or Parks and Rec, but all of our trees that we have out there, apple trees, fruit trees, things like that, is there any thought ever been to putting some type of a plaque or label or something on the trees to say this is a edible tree, help yourself, something along that line. And again, I don't know if that's you or who.
That would be us. We certainly could add that if you wanted.
I walk by them and it's like, "Oh, Jim, can I pick those? You don't know, kind of thing." It was just-
Yeah.
It was just a thought when I was reading about your trees, so.
Yeah, there
In the-
might be a lot of them. and someone
In
comes to
the,
that.
instead of labeling each tree, I believe in the city of Edmonton, and correct me if I'm wrong, they'll have a map that has trees that are edible and which ones, is that correct? My sister goes foraging in the city all the time and she follows some sort of a, have you heard of that before?
Yeah, I think we do have a map, I'm not sure.
Would that be a like more beneficial, like more cost savings to just have like a map? Oh, like, I don't know how you want to proceed with that.
Yeah, so thank you, your worship. So I don't know the extent of this, but if council wants, we can research it and bring a costing back to council.
I mean, even as simple as flags or ribbon or something too, so. Any thoughts on that from anybody else?
We're always talking about having sustainable food supplies, and we have them in town, and if people are aware that it's edible, they can eat it. I think that's a good idea.
There's also a Facebook page actually that you can go on and say, if you have a fruit tree in your yard and you want someone to come and pick the apples off of it, because I often will say, come and pick my apples, they're ready today, or my rhubarb or whatever. There are some apps on, and I think Councillor Boniface has a.
So I'll just say there's all the apples that are on town land are quite edible. So like that, just some will taste better than others. Because I pick them all the time and make juice out of them, so they're fine. We have a lot of places in town like you talked about, but they're actually within public access that they actually grow rhubarb and a lot of different things. So the public's more than welcome to go pick it. Just most people feel that they would be trespassing, so they don't. But one is that big Sobe sign there, right by the ATB. There's great big bunches of, and rhubarb is one of those things, the more you pick it, the more it grows. So like, there's lots of places. So having a map or something like that to help people out, but I know I go all over town and pick stuff out of the, either it's grown in the other side of a walking trail or whatever. There's lots of areas.
There's a beautiful Saskatoon tree in the ER outside my fence. Or whatever the ER is called now. Councillor Fraser.
I was wondering then maybe just some awareness through our social media saying, did you know that the fruit trees on town property are for our citizens and for everybody? That might help alleviate some of the concern that people are worried about trespassing or taking something that doesn't belong to them.
What is our policies for things like that? Do we have an insurance cover, like insurance coverage policy of people picking things and eating things? No, we don't have to worry about that. Just a random question. Not anything we need to worry about. So do we need a motion, or is it Councillor Hutchinson?
I like what Maren said. I mean, I don't want a big expense associated with it too, but maybe if we could look at going through social media, even our newsletter page, to just bring awareness to what we have for edible products within our town limits. Is that good enough?
Any further discussion? Is that a fair motion? Was there a motion in there?
Well, it was.
Do you want Tracy are you happy with how she worded her motion? Okay, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council.
Oh, I have a question. Yep. So on part of your information, it says, in speaking with Transport Canada and Ed McDonald with JetPro Consulting, Transport Canada is proposing that the obstacle limitation surfaces for GPS RNAV approaches be amended to include a much wider runway strip clear areas. The requirements to maintain our current approach criteria they are proposing would be almost impossible to meet, as we would likely have to move all the buildings on the west side of the runway further back. The alternative is to have a higher approach minimum altitude, which could potentially result in more missed approaches in inclement weather. I am researching the effect of this. I'm assuming that's Jim.
Yep.
Yeah, the airport manager, right? And JetPro is lobbying Transport Canada on behalf of the many airports they serve. Do you know that if if Transport Canada approached us about this issue, or if JetPro is just trying to gather lobbying support?
I don't know. I would need to look into that, your worship.
Okay, would you mind finding out for me?
Yeah.
Would that be
Yeah,
okay?
no, your worship, I think Transport Canada, because in Mr. Lindsay's report, it says, in speaking with Transport Canada, so he has been in conversation with Transport Canada.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Counselor Hutchinson, do you have, your light is still on. Counselor Boniface?
Question, the repair you did on my street there, you've been getting calls about the lake of water?
We have,
Okay.
unfortunately, on the lakefront there, the road was quite flat beforehand, and it's going to be a question of how far back we would need to chase the repair. We're trying to see if we can get it to drain properly, we'd like to, but if it's going to involve tearing up 50 additional meters of road, it might not, it'll be cost prohibitive for us.
I don't believe you have a leak anymore. I believe it's just runoff water.
Well, yes, no, the problem with the puddle isn't the leak. It is just that the gutter line is quite flat.
Yeah.
And it was unfortunately flat-ish before.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments for Mr. Fraser? Thank you very much for your report.
Thank you, Council.
So corporate services. Does anybody have any questions for corporate services about the report? Okay, we can move forward.
These reports are always so compact.
Okay. Planning and community development. Mr. Schrader.
I gotta write my reports like Miss Quinlan. Good day, everyone. Just in regards to the Clean Energy Improvement Program, we have signed 2 contracts. We're the first community in the province of Alberta to do so. So feather in the cap of council and the community of Rocky Mountain House. So we have 2 that are signed. There are solar power projects within the community, but Renee is still working with some more applications to get them through as well. In regards to permits, busy so far in our department. Hopefully that's a good sign for the rest of 2022 moving forward. Some new homes are being built in lots that are available within the community, which is a positive sign moving forward. Our department is working on some RFDs regarding the SEEP bylaws, as well as compliance policy and encroachment policy that we'll be bringing to council in the future. Each year, our department does an internal audit from the Safety Codes Council, and we submitted our multidiscipline and fire internal review on March 11th. We have not heard back yet. And Renee and I attended the ICS 300 training in February. In regards to ECDev, we do have our supply chain study completed. We'll present that to council in the future. Our EDO did attend Edmonton Sportsman Show this weekend, and our community was well received as far as people interested in coming out to Rocky for tourism, but also relocating as well. He had some inquiries regarding that as well. He did attend that with the EDO from Clearwater County. It was a joint effort. Also, our EDO is developing our land inventory, as well as we'll be contacting owners regarding possible land options. And as well, planning is continuing or just starting to happen for the Market on Main event for 2022. Health and safety. Our 4 members are doing internal audits per department to help with their certification to be auditors for our community. And we didn't have a whole lot of incidents, which is a good thing for our community, but also our organization. Protective services. We had 88 files created in February. 65 of them were municipal calls, 12 were provincial, and 8 were assisting fire, RCMP, and other agencies. As you can see, unregistered motor vehicles is still high within our community at 18, speeding 7, and distracted driving was 5. As you see in the Protective Services report, some of the calls that the officers did in the month of February. Any questions in regards to my department?
Counselor Phillips?
Not a question, but a compliment. When we were at the Alberta Municipalities Leadership Caucus, Rocky Mountain House was recognized for the SEAP program
Oh, excellent.
as being the first. So that was a big feather. Thank all the staff for that. They put in a lot
Will
of
do.
work.
I'll pass that along.
Seeing no further questions. Lost my thing here. So that was planning and community development. You have no further questions, Counselor Caprero?
If there is no further questions, I was just going to make a motion.
Absolutely.
I will make a motion to accept 11.2 department reports from March 22nd, 2022 as presented.
Perfect. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. 12.1 action list. Do we have any items to add to the action list? Mr. Kraus, looks like everything is going along great.
We're moving along with council's list. Just to let you know, the action list is updated by every council resolution, so you've added to it throughout the whole meeting.
So we have a motion then on the action list. If there's no further questions or discussion. Counselor Fraser,
I will move to accept the action list as presented.
all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. If we don't have any other inquiries, notice of motions, call this, oh, sorry, Counselor Phillips.
I just have one administrative inquiry. I hate to keep sounding like a broken record, but just an update on what's going on with that firehouse as to if we have an update on
The
that.
Creekside House.
The Creekside House. Yeah.
Your worship, if council wants to go into a closed session, I'd be happy to update. Yeah. But
Did-
for publicly, we are in the process. There's a process in place for us to resolve the issue.
That's all I was wondering. Thank you.
So seeing no further agenda items or questions, I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.